All right, so we are live. Okay, guys, I'm gonna do my little spiel so people can come in. But I just want to say that I am extremely excited to have these two great people on my show. For a while, I've been wanting to do a talk about mental health. And because I know that I was in a relationship during the quarantine and it kind of fell apart during the quarantine. And so I've been wanting to kind of talk about how relationships are working, the stresses that are being brought onto relationships during the quarantine cycle, give people a space to kind of talk about, or ask questions of professionals that do this on a daily basis that help people work through not only issues with themselves, but also issues relationship wise. Um, these professionals are multidimensional. They specialize in LGBTQ issues. They specialize in issues. They specialize in a whole set of things. And so I believe that this panel, these two great people, will give us a great rounded discussion on things that you just may be wondering and considering about. I gave everybody the option to send me questions. All the questions that I'm going to ask of the panelists, they will be anonymous, so I'm not going to call out anybody's names, but they'll do their best to ask. And I'm going to have some of my questions of my own because, it's good to talk to therapists. And, I love therapists. I mean, we recognize that in China, as they started to come out of the pandemic, we saw divorce rates skyrocket in March. We saw inquiries in the United States go up by 50% for divorce. As we move now into kind of moving towards the tail end or even the middle of the pandemic, we're seeing that ring sales are going up. So people are now starting to get married after are trying to get married or get engaged after they've gone through this very intense time together, and it's brought some of them close. I've heard people say that they've really learned who their children are because they've never spent this much time with their children this often. It's just been crazy. Relationships have highly been impacted during this time. And so to be able to have a conversation about it, I think is very important. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look off to the side because I have three screens in front of me. So it's going to kind of look like I'm looking off to the side, but I'm going to look off to the side. I'm going to read their bios and then I'm going to bring these two wonderful guests on so we can kind of get into this conversation because I'm excited about it. So the first person I want to introduce is Sarah Noble. Sarah Noble received a Bachelor of Arts from Sarah Lawrence College and her Doctor of Osteopathy from the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. She currently works at Albert Einstein Medical Center where she is attending psychiatrist. Sarah is interested in women's mental health, particularly postpartum depression and depression during pregnancy. She has taught throughout the Philadelphia area about the delicate process of medication management during pregnancy and lactation. She uses a combination of interpersonal and cognitive behavioral therapy to address the struggles that new moms can have adjusting to parenting in the face of a mental health crisis. She also focuses on LGBTQ mental health care and is a secretary for the AGLP, the National Organization for LGBTQ Psychiatrists. She is currently creating curricula for her department as well as working with the hospital-wide group to improve LGBTQ care. Working with the obstetrics department, Sarah and Dr. David Jaspin have created the Pride Clinic, which specializes in LGBTQ competent care. The second guest that I have on here is Anthony Tony Purnell Flewellen. Was born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He is a proud alumna of Lincoln University, HBCU's Rock, having graduated with a BS in clinical counseling psychology. Tony also has a MA from Eastern University in clinical counseling with a concentration in applied behavioral analysis. Tony is the owner of Enlightened Therapeutic Services, which is a private practice in West Philadelphia. Outside of his private practice, Tony is the program director for SOAR Core Recovery Center, a medication assisted treatment facility, and is also employed at Friends Hospital as the lead clinic social worker. He chose to work in the field of mental health because he wants to normalize therapy in the African American community. He is also a certified youth mental health first aid instructor, life coach, and motivational speaker. He is best known as a transformational therapist, helping others to live their best life possible. Tony is truly a person who's committed to the highest standard of excellence. He is highly intelligent, extremely motivated, and has a genuine heart for people. You can see him each and every week for Wisdom Wednesdays. Yes, very good. Which is live broadcast on multiple social media platforms. Wisdom Wednesday focuses on uplifting, encouraging, and inspiring the community through various topics such as mental health, self-esteem, self-love, and relationships. He continues to build his brand as a lightsaber and believes everyone has the ability to shine. You may find him on Facebook and Instagram at Tony Purnell Lightwalker and Twitter, Tony Lightworker. I said Walker, worker. In fact, what we'll do is this. I'll definitely share their information with you. If you actually go on my social media, you'll be able to click on the stories, and all of their social media is attached to the stories. All right. So I am going to bring on my two guests who I'm excited to bring. So we have Sarah Noble, Mrs. Sarah Noble, and Tony Purnell.
Woo!
Hey guys.
How do you even like manage to do all the stuff that you do?
Exactly. I'm so surprised. I'm so shocked.
All right. So I just want to kind of give you, and I just read a whole slew of stuff about you guys, right? But I just want to give y'all a space to kind of just talk about like what you guys have been doing during this pandemic. I know that it's probably been crazy for you guys, like dealing with the issues that come along with what's going on. So I guess we'll let Sarah go first and just kind of tell you what's been happening. What's been going on with you during this pandemic so far?
Well, so I guess I'm the medical director at Einstein's outpatient. So the first couple weeks were a little wild as we were trying to figure out how to navigate seeing our patients safely. And thankfully, we were able to pretty quickly transition to doing all telepsych. So we've been able to see folks. And what's pretty amazing is that because we're doing telepsych, I think, we're actually seeing more folks than we have this time last year, which I think is a testament to how having this new modality has enabled a lot of people to access mental health care in a more consistent way than they would have been able to generally. And I think that's pretty cool. Like, so I sort of silver lining to this really awful cloud.
Yeah, I can imagine. How about you, Tony?
I'm in total agreement with Sarah. So, as we all know, we have to adjust, with anything that's going on in our lives. And as clinicians, we're helping our clients and our patients to adjust the best way possible. And so that adjustment does look like teletherapy, look like telepsych, and how we go about it in the best way possible. And so you have said everything right, Sarah. I've noticed in my practice, there has been actually a spike in referral services. So a lot of people are seeking out therapeutic services and support during this time as well. And surprisingly, individuals who deal with anxiety and or OCD are actually handling this epidemic pretty well.
Really?
Pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
You would think it's an exorbitant amount of stress, but actually they're handling it pretty well.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. So why do you think people with OCD and anxiety are handling this pretty well? And hold on, let me say this. Guys, like this, share this with your friends. Please put questions in the comment section because we want to know what you guys are thinking or any questions that you may have for our wonderful group of therapists. So let me go back to the question. Why do you think anxiety and OCD are people with these things are actually faring a little bit better than most? Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, I think a lot of my patients have said, like, this is sort of what I've been preparing for my whole life.
Yeah.
Like, I've got all the skills to navigate this. Well, everyone's come into my world.
That's it. I have nothing more to say. Nothing to add. That's exactly.
Really?
It's like I live this life. Now you're seeing what I experienced on a daily. What I go through, my thought process, how I actually manifest things in real life. This is what I experienced. So for a lot of people who have experienced anxiety, social anxiety, and phobias and OCD, actually, they're managing it very well. Very well.
Gee. So then let me ask you a question. Like, outside of the people with the OCDs and anxieties, right? How are we seeing with relationships now? I mean, I want to kind of pivot to this because this is what people are, they want to know. So what are you seeing as far as relationships concerned? Like, what issues are you seeing when you have people coming to you and they're saying, okay, yeah, I have anxiety. I've been able to wear a mask. I'm washing my hands, you know what I'm saying? And I do all these things. How are they interacting when they're now inside the home with people that they would probably have space from on a regular basis?
Yeah. What you want to go, Sarah?
I mean, I guess my instinct is to say it's kind of across the board. And I think that's because it really depends on kind of folks' temperament. I've got some folks who are just generally pretty positive and, despite they've got their mental health stuff, but like their temperament is fairly optimistic and positive. And so they're taking it as an opportunity to spend more time with their family.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got folks who, change is difficult and it challenges their temperament. And this has been a real challenge because it is like, oh my God, my structure has completely broken down and I just don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah, what I can say, so naturally, if you look at people on the most basic level, and if I'm spending time with you on a daily basis, Alex and Sarah, and that time is going to look different now. It's like, oh my goodness, I love Sarah. We've been spending so much time together. Oh my gosh, I'm learning so much more about her. And then as time increases, you have the possibility, that's what I say, possibility for a lot of tension to occur in these relationships. So like Sarah said, with us either one of two things. We have a moment of bringing together people. We have a moment of seeing, carrying us through. So what I have noticed about this pandemic and about everything that we're going through is people have a lot more time in their hands.
Okay, so then let me ask you a question. So, like, and this is actually one of the questions that was sent to me, right? So when you're going through these situations, because I know I was in a relationship before this pandemic started, right? And before the pandemic, we were doing amazingly well, right? We were able to travel together. We were able to go to events together. It was awesome. But then after March hit, we kind of were pushed into a situation where we were living together, right?
Yeah.
So when you're living together with somebody, that's when those communication skills have to really set in, right?
Yeah.
And so then, I mean, how do you go about diffusing an argument that, one person may think is like, that one person may have an issue that, the other one may feel is kind of minute, it's kind of small. How do you communicate with your partner effectively to like make sure that this situation is something that, both feel that there's compromise and they come to a solution that keeps them together? Like, what are communication skills one can use specifically during this time where, one person may be irritated by small things because of the stresses that are going on, and the other one might just be kind of lax and, kind of dismissive about it? What are good communication skills we should be practicing during this time to have to use these type of disagreements?
Definitely so. I think, like I said, when you have two people in a space, and you don't have the structure that you used to have, right? We're all used to structure at some level. Even if I could just go out and have my daily walk. When you're in this place and I don't have that structure anymore, you can lose a lot of the things that you would normally do. How to communicate is even more important now. So I would say communication starts. I'm going to get some fire for this. Communication starts with just basically saying how you really feel. When you bottle stuff up and you become numb, that's the problem. State it at the core of the issue and the issue starts. That's one point of view that I would say. Do not let it boil over. Do not sweep it under the rug. Talk about it at the point when it starts. Now I might have an issue with Sarah right now. I might need an hour to calm down. That's still in
Mhm.
relative time frames to communicate. Okay, that's what I would say.
Well, Sarah, let me ask you a question. Like, how do you, and so he was saying that being direct and straightforward with people is probably the best way. But how do you make sure that you are saying things to people in a way to where when you're being direct, right? But you're not being mean. What is that line? Out of curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, so there are really specific techniques when you're having difficult conversations.
Mhm.
Always use I statements. So instead of saying like, Tony, when you do that thing, you're just so mean and nasty. which is just like automatically going to put Tony on the defensive because I'm basically telling him what he's doing.
Mhm.
So instead of saying that, I could say, "Hey, Tony, this, I feel really upset when we're talking, and I hear you say these sorts of statements. It hurts. My feelings start to get hurt, or I feel like I'm being shut down."
Yeah.
So suddenly, I'm talking about the way I feel, and how the things that he's doing are impacting me.
Yeah.
So I'm letting him know what my feelings are and allowing some space between his actions and my feelings.
So, okay.
Mhm.
So you're saying it's really important to separate the actions from how you feel, right? I mean, I know one of the things for me is that, I mean, one of the things that happened in my relationship where we sat down and we had a conversation, and they were saying, I don't know if I see the future very clearly. And I know like some of the issues that I have deal with being abandoned, right? I mean, I didn't have a present father at times. And so immediately that triggered me. And then my bad habits start to come in, right? Where I become cold. I start to isolate myself. I start to push them away because I really don't know how to deal with that, or because I've had past relationships where I felt like I was quote unquote abandoned. I leave the situation, right? So how do we communicate things to our partners where we're like, this is a trigger for me, and what are the limits to like the sacrifices that you make where you're recognizing it's a trigger for your partner. You understand that certain things may turn your partner off, but what are the limits to going or dealing with these types of situations and actions? And I'll let you hit that, Tony. And I'm just going to say this to you. Sometimes your sound sounds a little bit muffled, like you're far away. So I'm not sure what you could do to speak. I mean, I want to hear this clearly from you. All right, go ahead.
I'll try to fix this.
That's better right now so far. Yeah.
I can hear me.
Yeah.
So I think we really truly have to understand that there is a difference between sacrifice and compromise in relationships, right? So we think sacrifice is the end all be all. Oh my God, Sarah, if you love me, then you'll do such and such and so and so. Then you'll quit your job tomorrow and you'll just stay home. If you love me, make a sacrifice versus making a compromise. So I think relationships need to understand there is a very thin line between what a sacrifice is and what a compromise looks like. I may be a compromise is beneficial to both parties versus a sacrifice is beneficial to me and me only. Now, I'm not saying there's not any benefit in a sacrifice, but it's very rare. Compromising for me and you, and compromising is also saying what is the bottom line? How can we overcome an issue? What is the problem solving factor in this issue? A sacrifice, you really don't. It's really for me. I would start here about noticing the differences between a compromise and a sacrifice.
Well, okay. What do you, Sarah? It seems like you have something that you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think that that's a really great way of distinguishing the two, and to like make it concrete and apply it to your situation. So a sacrifice would be saying, all right, I'm never going to leave you, I promise, which is completely unrealistic. Like no one can make that promise, right?
Yeah.
But a compromise would be saying, okay, I know that particular statement is completely triggering.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's talk about the present.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about what we're going to do, in the next week, month, couple months, because that feels like a time frame I'm comfortable with. And that will keep you from feeling triggered, and we can continue having a rational conversation where you're not just running away and completely regress and unable to have a real conversation.
Right. Yeah.
I hear you. What does space look like, right? So when somebody says that they need space, and in that time of space, how do you make that happen? I mean, I know during this quarantine time, right? A lot of people are having to be creative in how they find love, right? I mean, the apps start to become something that a lot of people use a lot. Whether we're talking about Chat, Tinder, Bumble, we got Hinge now. You have plenty of fish.
Yeah, I'm very that
You got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. People sliding those DMs.
Yeah.
So what is a kind of good way to kind of like bring those spaces together, right? Where you're text messaging somebody, and then like you're trying to engage them and kind of meet in person, or doing a FaceTime chat. I mean, and we're not even talking about being catfish, but like, what is the best way to kind of bring those things together? Like, what is more than enough space somebody should tolerate? And when and how often, or how should people kind of come together? And I'm gonna toss that back at whoever wants to try to jump at it, because it seems like you both are kind of thinking about that. It looks like Tony is.
I'm a little confused. Is it I'm already in a relationship and I'm stepping out to be on the app?
No. I'm talking about for somebody who's single. We're not talking about cheating. Okay, yeah.
That's how I took for a second.
Okay.
So I'm single.
Mm-hmm.
And what else?
And it could be for both, right? So, because I think I kind of combined two questions into one. So, I guess in a relationship, if we are in a relationship, right, what is too much space? If I am single, what is too much space when I'm trying to bring it together?
Okay.
Now, does that clarify a little bit better for you?
A little.
I mean, I guess it feels probably dependent on the person. I think everybody's a little different in terms of how quickly they feel comfortable letting down the walls and becoming intimate.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably has a lot to do with just like personal history and whatnot. I think that, as with most things, it's a spectrum, and jumping in too quickly is probably not great, and then holding off for too long is probably not great either. And there's probably like a nice happy medium of kind of, taking your time and getting to know people, and then, slowly becoming more and more intimate.
But you know what? I think with that is knowing yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a person, I'm very affectionate, and let's say my partner's on the other side of the town or in another state, I may need to find new ways to still keep the spark in our relationship, to keep it interesting in the midst of us being apart. If I know me and I like to be with my partner or be in intimacy, and there are many forms of intimacy, we're not just talking about sexual intimacy, but if I want to be intimate with my partner, you might need to find different ways to do that. And so if this is another thing, we're talking about relationships during COVID, and if this pandemic allows for too much space, I might do something that I regret. If it allows too much space during this pandemic, I might lose myself. So it really depends on who I am as an individual. I have to know me before I can know who we are together.
So let me ask you a question. Does it really depend on the attachment styles of the partners? And how do you figure those things out when you're in relationship?
Well, I mean, I tell people all the time, take a love language test. I love that. Are you a gift giver? Are you a words of affirmation type of person? Like, simple. It's very easy. What is your love language? And my love language is not saying that, Alex, this is the way he shows me love. No, this is the way I need to be shown love. Alex will give me flowers every day, every week. But gift giving or receiving is not my love language. I might need encouragement. I might need words of affirmation. Or I might just need your physical touch. Like, you can't tell me what my love language is. How I want to be loved. How I need to be loved. That's my love language. So a simple couples assessment, what is the love language, can go far with. Far with.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it does. A lot of it comes down to knowing yourself, taking the time to recognize your love language, your attachment style. And when you know these things about yourself, you are so much better prepared to enter into a relationship, because then you can talk to your potential partner and say, I know these things about myself. What do you think? Like, what do you like? What, are we going to mesh like this? And it just, it helps you to get to know each other really well. It bypasses a lot of like the junk that can happen after the honeymoon phase, because you've already like had these conversations and you're not as likely to just like butt heads. And it just increases intimacy because you're having these deep, thoughtful conversations.
And let's break that thing down even more. So relationship means really, who am I in relation to you? That's relationship. Who am I in relation to Sarah? Who am I in relation to Alex? So if I break who I am in relation to this as a whole, I can be better beneficial to us.
Yeah.
Who I am. A lot of people, and forgive me, a lot of people don't know who they are in relationships. Mess. That's why they accept less than they deserve. I don't know who I am and what I allow for myself. So that's a very big thing.
Yeah.
So then let me ask you a question. Do you think therapy is the best thing for this type of issue? As in a relationship, if you recognize that you and your spouse are having issues, how do you think a spouse can go to their other spouse and say, look, I said their other spouse. How do you think a person can go to their spouse and say, maybe we should go into therapy? How do you think you can approach that conversation specifically between people? Because sometimes people look at therapy as something that's taboo. How do you break this or approach this conversation with the spouse that you have because you feel something should be fixed in the relationship?
Well, me, I'm always going to be an advocate for therapy. I have to be an advocate for therapy. And there's different methods of therapy. You got to find a therapist that's going to be beneficial for both of you guys. Well, I might be an individual therapist myself. Oh, babe, you got to see my therapist. We should go to my therapist for couples counseling. That may not be the best therapist for you guys as a whole, right? So couples counseling is so fun. I love couples counseling. But the thing is, therapy has to have a commitment from both parties. I can't be in this fight for myself. I can't want this thing all alone. How are we both going to go into this? We have to both see benefit from it. So you might want me to go to therapy, Alex. If I see no benefit in it, I'm not going to be invested. You see,
How about you, Sarah? Go ahead.
I think one way of approaching it is like, not that there's a problem that needs to be fixed, but how can we just be like better. And, you know, maybe we're not doing such a great job of communicating anymore, which often happens. You know, jobs get in the way, other commitments get in the way. If there are kids, that just is like a whole time suck, emotional energy suck. And it just often helps to have an unbiased third party that can sit there and say, you know, let's just step back and look at the big picture because you guys are in the weeds.
I agree.
So like I think that Tony was getting to a space of where he was saying sometimes couples therapy doesn't work for people because they may need individual therapists. I know for myself, when I'm shopping around for therapists, it's a little difficult for me because I mean, I know that sometimes a therapist could be useful for me at one point, and then I find I've done a certain amount of work with them, and so then I need a new type of therapy, a new modes of them. Can one of you just kind of talk about the different types of modes? Like I tend to lean towards psychotherapy. I love psychotherapy when I'm being questioned and stuff like that. I know another therapist that I was using said that he liked to build a friendly type of interaction with me, but I felt like he was too common. This was an older guy who was LGBTQ, so it was really important to me that I had a Black LGBTQ person to be a therapist for me because I just wanted to see what it felt like. I've had other types. I had younger ones. I had older ones. I'd had somebody who was an immigrant that was a therapist for me, which we actually did great work. So like, can you kind of talk about some of the different types of therapy and how people should go through the shopping process of that? And I'll let you go, and then I'll let you hit at it too, Tony. But Sarah, can you kind of talk to me about the different types of therapies and that kind of work with different types of people?
Yeah, so there's a few different schools of therapy. So there's sort of traditional psychoanalytic or psychodynamic therapy, and that's like Freud was the father of that. And the idea there is that you're working kind of early childhood developmental stuff, and it kind of plays out in the relationship that's happening in the room. And it's often long-term, sometimes very frequent. So that's that. CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, which is based on this idea that cognitions and behaviors often kind of go hand in hand or play on each other to contribute to anxiety or depression.
Let me ask you a question. What does cognition mean? Just for
types of thought patterns.
Thoughts. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so sort of these like automatic thoughts that we sort of develop early on that kind of happen unconsciously, and we'll kind of switch into them when we're either anxious or depressed. And so by kind of identifying and addressing them, we can help to shift ourselves out of those anxious or depressive phases. And then an offshoot of that is DBT, or dialectical behavioral therapy. And that takes the cognitive behavioral therapy and kind of ups it a notch by adding in mindfulness techniques and some other like more intensive behavioral stuff. And it's often used for folks who have borderline personality disorder and other like self-harm stuff. And then there's interpersonal psychotherapy, which is specifically focuses on kind of actualizing more effective interpersonal relationships. So the idea being that maybe you're not actually manifesting yourself in relationships in the way that you would like to be. And so helping you to identify maybe the patterns or that you're kind of playing out within your relationships.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. I mean, what type of therapy, what type of So, what type of therapy do you find, and I guess for you guys, has been the most useful? I say useful for you guys. And then two, what type of therapy do you guys specialize in? And I'll let you go, Tony. Now that we've kind of gotten a little bit of the different types of therapy that we do, what type of therapy do you specialize in, and what types of processes have you found to be most successful?
So I said before, I'm more of a transformational therapist, and I don't know, I think I just coined myself as a transformative therapist, but at my core, I would be a solution-focused therapist. So we live in a microwave world, right? People have issues that they want to fix. They want quick results. And so solution-focused therapy focuses on the problem and the vision and how do I tackle this issue? How do I get above and beyond? I'm also CBT oriented. So we talk about, Sarah discussed the cognitive distortions a person has. We changing our thought process. So how I think correlates to how I feel correlates to how I behave. My thoughts, my feelings, and my actions are all connected. Um, I don't think we can say which one is more useful out of all the approaches. I think it's really basically saying what benefit am I looking for, and then direct the therapist to that specific model. Now, I'm not really psychodynamic. I don't really deal with a lot of childhood stuff unless I need to capture some historical context. That's not really my approach. I'm more CBT solution focused.
Okay. And how about you, Sarah?
So I tend to be pretty trauma oriented, and because of that, I really am. I conceptualize in a pretty psychodynamic focused way, because for me, it's all pretty much attachment trauma. Like, it's a rare person I run across who doesn't have some sort of attachment trauma. So yeah, I mean, that being said, there's always room for. It's probably like a hodgepodge. I'm using CBT techniques and some interpersonal stuff, but like overarching conceptualizing, I'm doing psychodynamic.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you a question. If somebody decides to go into therapy, does that mean that they have do they have to have a problem? Right. And I know how you're gonna respond. Does it mean that they have a problem? Does it mean that they need to be fixed? Or is therapy something that we all have experience? Like what? No, let me ask you. Do you feel like is therapy mean that you have a problem? And let me go to you guys, whoever wants to jump in and ask that. And why do you think that this stigma is attached to it?
Problem is relative. I mean, problem is subjective. What does problem even mean? You know what I mean? So, let me just start with our culture. When we talk about African American culture, what happens in this house stays in this house. Don't go talk about our business. Don't go spreading everything that goes on in here. And that, like Sarah said, allows us to get trauma. When a person can express themselves in a way that they're supposed to, not bottle everything up, I may have an adverse effect. So when you say a problem, traditionally, Black people do not go to therapy. I don't want nobody in my business. I don't want to shrink, no head doctor. What can they tell me about my culture? One, because there wasn't enough of us. They didn't see enough of us because you don't understand my cultural experience.
Yeah.
So that's why there's a lot of taboo with people going to therapy. We're exposed to it now a little more, and people are more open to it. But I don't necessarily. You might want to just talk about the accomplishments that are going on in your life and how to handle them. Okay, so you're not necessarily a problem per se or an issue. And I think while you're here, Sarah, we need to talk about. It's a whole lot of these popping up as well. Therapist versus life coaching or any type of coaching.
Well, I guess we could jump on that because I think I know a couple of life coaches out here who don't necessarily have any training. And then I also want to hit on maybe the whole psychic thing, because I would think I was telling one of you guys that one of my friends prefers psychics, and how maybe somebody who is good at paying attention to behaviors may be able to use that in necessarily an unethical way. Go ahead, Sarah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I do often worry about that sort of situation because I don't discount that there are very sensitive and attuned people out there who can pick up on other people's emotional states and kind of reflect that. The difference is that Tony and I have been trained with ethics, and we've been trained to take our own stuff and study it and take it out of the relationship. And so we are not likely, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but we are not likely to harm other people
Do
in
no
the
harm.
work that we do. Exactly. And I think that that's the important distinction.
So you guys are bound by legal and ethical codes.
Yeah, ethical.
And so then let me ask you another question then. I mean, so let's go back to the life coaching thing. What do you think separates the whole life coaching thing from actual therapy? Now, I was always kind of confused about that a little bit myself, Purnell, because I believe I had somebody that was a life coach try to come in, and I didn't necessarily kind of know the difference between therapy and life coaching. And so I just assumed that they would be similar to a therapist. But as I started to experience it, I realized that it wasn't necessarily what I was looking for. So can you kind of just give me a little bit of a rundown of what the difference is between life coaching and actual therapy, and also what the difference is between discussing issues with your family and friends and going to a therapist? And then what kind of codes are you guys locked into as far as being discreet and keeping this stuff to yourself? So go ahead.
So for me, if I can just like simplify coaching, if I can look at any sense, I think coaching really tends to focus on the present and the future rather than the past, right? Coaches help people to identify their goals, the problems, and how to achieve them, and the obstacles that's involving, that's surrounding them to get over their goals, to get to their goals. And I'm not saying therapy cannot do that, but coaching is more so action-oriented, specific goals to get to this place. Therapy is a whole different ballgame. You might look at the biopsychosocial aspect of an individual, biological, psychological, socially, environmentally. What is happening with this individual? Therapy is more in tune with the individual. And so I think those are the major differences between life coaching and therapeutic practices.
Okay. Yeah, that's very good. So then let's go back to what guys, as far as bound is to secrecy. What types of things can I talk to my therapist about that I don't have to fear getting put out there? Like what can I talk to my therapist about to where I don't, like, are you guys bound to certain things? I mean, like, if my therapist is a friend, or if my therapist is like somebody close to me, what kind of, how do I know that they're keeping this stuff to themselves? And I guess you can go that, Sarah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only thing, as long as someone is an adult, so over 14, yeah, the only thing that we have to share is if they are a danger to others, in which case we have to warn, we have a duty to warn.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody makes a direct threat to someone else in the session,
others,
and then we,
yeah,
I mean, if they are a danger to themselves, we have to there's like a clinical need to assess and address that, but we don't necessarily, I guess, have to really share that. Like there's an actual law that if someone threatens someone else, we have to tell. We actually have to tell that person. Like we have to reach out and try to warn that person.
Absolutely.
But anything else? I can talk to you about anything else in the world.
100%.
And
unless it was somehow subpoenaed by a lawyer for a court case.
Okay. So outside of that, we got you guys are you are bound by law. Keep that a secret. So even if my spouse comes to you guys and wants to know, okay.
No,
so
that would be like super not cool if we shared that with your spouse.
And
I just asked it. Yeah. So let me ask you another thing. So let's go back to these relationships. Like, what are some of the stresses that you are seeing that are kind of bringing stress on a relationship? Say it's a pretty good relationship, there's a great connection. What do you think is happening specifically right now that is causing these extra stresses to happen? Like, what should we look out for? Like, sometimes when we're going through things, we tend to redirect it at the significant other we may be with, right? What are some of these things how do you feel like we should do? What should we be looking out for, right? So if I'm dealing with and I'm going through a stressful time, like what should we be looking out for, and what actions or responses should I look out for so that I'm not dishing out on my significant other and also as we're stuck inside?
So when we look at relationship issues, they're either neutral or negative, right? Now, because we're in a space of an epidemic, there has a high probability for a lot of tension to occur. And so with that tension, we need to figure out how do we get over it? How do we get through it? One of the telltale signs that you should notice is irritability. So very easy to notice when your partner is irritable. And people think, wow, irritability, that's nothing. That's where a lot of it starts. If I got snippy or snappy, and that's not usually me, I'm irritable, or I may go to a different part of the house because I don't want to be in your presence. Look at those little signs like that. Start with how irritable your partner may be, and that can be a telltale sign that something may be wrong initially.
Let me ask you. I mean, like, so as far as sex is concerned, and I'm sorry to get a little bit spicy. How do you know when it's becoming an issue, and how do you communicate sexual issues with your partner? Right. So, like, say, like your partner may you start to see a decline in the sex, or you may not necessarily enjoy sex with your partner. How do you broach this conversation with your partner? And I'll let you go with that, Sarah. How do you broach that conversation?
So definitely don't do it in bed as you're trying to have sex. That's a terrible time. Really a good killer. You want to sort of try to do it in like a neutral tone, in a neutral place. Just sort of just bring it up and say, hey, can we talk about our sex life? It just feels like things have changed, or it feels like it's not, this is pretty normal, but we've been together for a while. It's not the way it used to be, or, we've been together for a while and maybe it would be kind of exciting to try something different. Just try like a, just kind of easygoing, tone of voice, bringing it up.
So, I mean, I know, there was one time, and I hate to, I guess I'm allowed to be over. So, there was one time I was with another guy, and when you dating men, sex for men is extremely, extremely sensitive, right? Because, I think a lot of men, we kind of feel like our sense of masculinity is tied to how well we perform sexually, right? And so I remember one time, had a partner that really didn't know how to handle things sexually, right? And so like I would find myself in a situation where I'm always going to make sure my partner is satisfied, but I was not getting that same energy from my partner, right? And so like it after a while it started to become frustrating, and in the middle of a session, I just kind of was just like, look, I'm good. Just
right in the middle.
oh yeah, I'm that type of person. I'm a very direct person. Now you said you got to be honest with people, right? So I was just like, I'm good.
Oh,
So like, you know, it kind of threw something off. How do you bring a conversation back to the situation? Okay, well, you know, how do you mend those types of situations where one of the partner or the one of this person has a bruised ego in the whole relationship type thing? And I mean, unfortunately, I'm bringing myself to this situation because I'm asking these questions for other people. But like, I mean, I think we've all been in a situation where we've had a sexual partner that wasn't necessarily satisfying, or we felt like we weren't satisfying our partners. You know, like how do we fix these things to where both partners now feel comfortable enough of coming together, especially in a time like this where sex is probably a great way of releasing some of these stresses that you feel, right? A way to relax. And also after the sex, you can kind of open up with partner. Like, how do we have these how do you mend those types of things?
I mean, I really do think it's important to be open, be vulnerable, be honest, right? This is your partner. So if anybody, I should be able to express myself with this person. I'm going to use a corporate approach.
I was thinking the same thing.
So let's say you have like a sandwich method. What do you do well? What can be done better? And then end with what you do well again. I really like when you massage my back before we get into the do. I would really appreciate if you did this next time. But babe, don't forget that you also do this really well.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a sandwich method approach. And so if you don't want to have somebody bruise or who typically does have a bruised ego, try that method. And that's more typical corporate approach when it comes to employees. But I think this might be
What do you think, Sarah?
That was exactly what I was thinking too. Like you always want to go in there with like the sweet talk, like baby, this is what you do so well, and I really like keep on doing it. But that like if you could just add in this thing, it'd be so great.
Yeah. I mean, because I know, like, I mean, you know, it's kind of weird to have these conversations with people, right? And like, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, we all feel like we're good at our certain thing.
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be because we really like. This is and then you can finish it up. Like you could also be like, and you know, and what can I do? Because I want to make sure you are having the best sex of your life. So tell me what I can do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, I think that relationships are they're kind of odd to navigate, and sometimes when we're going to work full time, you don't have to deal with these issues, right? You can just find yourself at work or away from the home, and you don't really have to deal with certain things because you have distractions. But when you're like constantly in a house, how do you deal with these types of issues? My other thing is too, like when you are in a home, right, and you have children, and these children are now adding to the stress. How do parents find ways to keep their passion with each other when they're dealing with constantly having to teach the children, they're homeschooling the children, then they're also trying to work at the same time, but then also navigate their own relationship? Like how are they dealing with it? How do you suggest dealing with these things in a decent way? And how do you suggest the communication happens not only between the parents together, but between the parents and children? Like how do we discuss like these agreements that we need to have to kind of function a little bit better?
That's like an hour-long show in itself.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think for a lot of parents right now, it's just like holding on for dear life and trying to survive. But I think, it's figuring out how to spell one another so everybody gets a little bit of a break, and how to carve out like 10, 15 minutes of time each day when you're probably in the morning before your braids have been completely fried, when you can just touch base and say, like, without kids, when you just be like, hey, remember me? Night in bed, after the kids are in bed, and just be like, look at each other in the eyes and just say hi. Okay, we're still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of couples counseling, especially during COVID. And so one of the goals that they wanted to do, one of my couples specifically, wanted to increase intimacy, increase communication. And so I had taught them there are multiple levels of intimacy. It's not just sexual as I said before. So one of the activities I gave them was a 7 breath forehead connection. And so I'm fixing my forehead on your forehead, and I'm matching my breath with yours. It might be a little difficult at first or a little awkward, but I'm matching my breathing at the same time as yours. Your heartbeat, your rate at the literal same time. If you're going to breathe, I'm going to breathe with you. And so that is a level of intimacy that you do not expect, right? And so we're increasing our intimacy. Now we're also increasing our communication. Damn, babe, how did we feel after that? Wow, this is really different. I never tried anything like this before. And so when we talk about experimental activities for relationships, that's exactly what it is. You have the liberty to experiment and reignite some of that flame in your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So what you have done before might not work right now during COVID. The traditional methods, they might not work. You may need something a little different, a little bit healthier around this time. And I'm not talking about, okay, let's pull out the whips and chains. Let's pull out this. That's communication and intimacy.
Yeah.
Okay. I also have another question. Friendships.
Yes.
You're talking about friendships during COVID, right? I realized that a lot of my friendships, well, I found myself letting go of a lot of my friendships because I felt like a lot of them were a lot more shallow than I recognized before this time, right? I mean, I know that we're going through a lot of emotions and we're talking about the people within the home, but what about the people outside the home, right?
Wow.
I know one of my friends who I'm really, really, really close to, and I see him all the time. I mean, I see him at work, I see him out and about, you know what I'm saying? Like, but since this time has happened, it's kind of been like, boom, we haven't seen each other in months, right? Or weeks.
Wow.
So how do you maintain these friendships inside of all the chaos within the home? And I just kind of want to get some advice on that. Like, because I remember in Tony's video where he was promoting tonight, he was talking about our friendships also kind of dictate how we function in life too. And I feel like they're very important also. So, I mean, you guys kind of want to hit on that a little bit for me?
Sure.
Tony, you want to do?
So, as I said earlier, relationship means who I am in relation to you. So you can be my friend, Sarah, you can be my partner, Alex. But that means who I am in this circle, in this group. Unfortunately, with this pandemic, a lot of people have gained a lot of insight. And I think therapy is about insight as well. But even on the basic level, you might gain a lot of insight by taking the time necessary that you didn't have before. You realize, damn, every time I hit up Alex, he is actually verbally abusive. And I didn't never notice that this was a friend. Or, he was very attached as a friend. And so to monitor and really assess those relationships is important during this time as well. You may have a clear mindset and now looking at those friendships. And I think the most beneficial part of that is actually taking a step back to really truly see.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think one of the articles that I've read in this time is talking about this as the great pause and really taking it as that, like the pause from all of the sort of the commercialism, the being out and busy and allowing ourselves the space to look inward, to think about what's valuable. And I think that means what's valuable in terms of our relationships, in terms of who we want to spend our time with, where we want to put our energy.
I love it.
And so let me ask you a question. So when you're figuring these things out about yourself, right? I mean, like my circle of friends has completely changed. And I mean, like one of the things about me is that I've said that you are the CEO of your life, right? You can hire and fire at will, right? So like while a friend may be good for a certain time in your life, when the season changes in your life, you know, I'm always religion. When the season changes, that means that that personality or that interaction doesn't necessarily feed you the way it did before. Should one have a conversation with those people, or is it okay just to let them go and just ghost? Or just release them? Like, how do conversations? What type of communication should happen when you recognize that this person or these people aren't necessarily feeding the space that you're in? And does it make you a bad person?
No. So I think I'm going to answer this in a very political way. So when you say let somebody go, one, being a therapist, I think there's always some type of benefit in able to talk anything out and express yourself why this is happening and this is the route I'm going to take. Not should I take this. This is what I'm about to do because I feel like this is not been happening before. This is what I'm moving towards now. If that person, if you made attempts several times, and that person is not acknowledging, we're not respecting any type of boundaries that you made before, then it might be say, okay, well, now I'm just going to just let it fall by the wayside. But I think every first or second attempt starts by an initial conversation. There's benefit in talking about the things that we go through. Why is this happening? And if this does not change, this is what's going to happen. If this don't change, this therefore will happen. Oh, okay. When you do this, I'm going to do that, and I think people need to understand there's a difference between reacting and responding. So I might necessarily react by the old way of doing Tony, but now doing COVID, I'm going to respond. I'm not going to react. I'm going to respond. Okay, cool. Well, my response is this now. This is how I'm going to handle this situation moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of seconds. I mean, Sarah actually just wrote. I found out it was a chapter in the book, and she does great work at Einstein. And Tony does great Wednesday shows. He has a great therapy center in West Philadelphia. Guys, I want you to take a little bit of time to talk about you because we're about 3 minutes over. So I want you to kind of let people know how they can contact you, how they can reach out to you, and how they can connect with you. Any websites or any social media that you would like them to know about, any projects that you're working on that you would like people to know about. Go ahead and shoot that out now, and give us something that you feel like you would want a word of wisdom that you would like to leave with everybody as we go ahead and depart. Okay. And who would like to go first, or would you like me to choose?
I'll go first.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm telling myself, so I'll get it over with.
Okay.
But I do want to sell this book because it's a great book and really the brainchild of my good friends. So Eric Yarbrough and Hope Slavunas, good friends in the AGLP. It's the pocket guide to LGBTQ mental health. It's both for providers and the lay public. And basically each chapter is one of the letters in the alphabet soup. And I was very privileged to write the B for bisexual chapter. And yeah, it's a great little book. And probably the best way to get in touch with me would be through the AGLP website, which is easy. Just Google it, AGLP. And probably the biggest project that I'm working on right now, that's a bit of like a pounding my head against the wall, is trying to create a curriculum to teach all of the attendings and residents at Einstein about systemic racism in medicine.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Try to create a curriculum that'll get permeated through the entire system.
That's good. That's good. I
Well,
love that.
After that, you know. Sarah, you done close it out. I am Tony Purnell, and I'm your homie, I'm your brother, and I am your friend. So, like I said, at my core, I am a servant. I am a healer. And so it's not just Wisdom Wednesday, but there's something for every day of the week for anybody who wants to be uplifted, encouraged, motivated, and inspired. We have Motivational Monday. We have Tony's Tuesday Tidbit. We have Wisdom Wednesday. We have Tony's Thursday Thought. And we have Affirmation Friday. And so if you don't like Wisdom Wednesday, you might find something else that you can really dibble and dabble into. And so I encourage you to be your best self, and I am really thankful for this opportunity to meet Sarah and to have this opportunity to be just a vessel of light. And I say I am light, I mean that. Okay? Thank you.
So, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for being on my show. I love the both of you. I mean, Tony is also a great singer, y'all. This thing will sing a run that will floor you. And I mean, Sarah has the best musical experiences at her house. Like, the last time I went to Sarah's house, she had like a full, like almost like an orchestra there with this beautiful singing. Like, it was amazing. I mean, you guys are so much more than your careers. You guys are just amazing people, and I'm so glad and so grateful that you gave me the opportunity and the pleasure of speaking to you guys for this past hour. Thank you so much for saying yes immediately. I really, really do love you guys. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and close out and give my closing word. And thank you. Thank you. All righty.
All right. Have a good night.
So, yeah, guys, therapy, mental health is really important. Mental hygiene is what one of my friends call it. You got to make sure that you maintain mental hygiene. I mean, just like all the other parts of your body, your mind is one of the most important parts. And you have to make sure that you are keeping it whole and healthy, just like your arm, just like your teeth, just like your heart and your lungs. You got to make sure your mind is staying whole, because right now, especially right now, as we're going through the pandemic, as we're going through all these trials and tests of maybe financial or dealing with family members, or maybe losing friends, or getting into relationships or getting out of relationships or anything of that nature, you got to make sure that we're staying sane and that we're staying mentally healthy, so that when we come out of this, we come out better and not more traumatized. All right. So please love on yourself. Please take time to take space and breathe. Take about 15 minutes, like they suggested, just to spend time with your partner. Take about 15 minutes to spend time with yourself. Go for a walk if you have to, or sit outside in the backyard just to clear your head, because right now we need it the most. All right. I love you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I was excited, and I'll be back next week at 8 p.m. You can check me out on YouTube. J8390, JAY8390 is my subscription. Subscribe to my channel so you can be updated when these shows come out. You can follow me on my like page, is Alex Deering, or you can follow me on Instagram, j.alex.deering. Any mode, pretty much, you can pretty much find me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Alex Deering. Please follow all of my social media whenever you get a chance. YouTube, again, subscribe. JAY8390 is where you subscribe. All right. Thank you so much. And I will talk to you next week at 8 p.m. With another great topic and some more great people. All right. Bye.